Welcome back to the Outliers Project. I'm your host, Molly Hawkins, and this show is all about conversations with people who've built unconventional careers, challenged traditional paths, and found their own way forward. Now, today's guest is super full circle for me. I first became familiar with Darren Rayner back when I was working at evo.com, and he was helping shape what felt like such an exciting era in snow media storytelling through his company Outliers. If you were in the ski world during that time, you probably remember how influential that project was. It wasn't just ski films. It felt like it was at the center of snow culture, and it really, really helped define an era for so many people because it brought forth that culture through social media and through storytelling and through content in a way that no one was really doing at that time now. Darren and I came up in that moat between Gen X and millennials where we were just getting our careers going as social media was emerging, and we were audacious enough and curious enough to actually start using it in our careers while other people were maybe not quite ready to adopt it. I literally set up and managed a MySpace page for evo.com. Now, a lot of agencies were not quick to respond to what was happening with social media and left this wide open gap for folks like he and I to start our agencies. And while I sold my agency so that I can focus on different things, Darren has taken things to a whole new level with his company, Magnifier. Today, we're talking about creative reinvention, the rise of social first content, whether great storytelling gets lost in the algorithm or not, and how AI is changing creative work, and where Darren thinks the industry is headed next. If you're a snow lover or identify as a nerd, or perhaps you have a marketing agency or you're a creator, I think you're going to like this one. Enjoy.
Darren, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining me here in our virtual studio.
Thanks for having me, Molly. I appreciate it.
Awesome. It's been quite some time since we have talked. You know, we go way back to the days of Evo when I was there and you were running Outliers. I want to say, what years was that?
Outliers, the clothing brand, would have been between 2003 and 2012, I think.
Okay, so I always like to start the show with a zinger. Are you ready?
Oh yeah, I'm ready for the zing.
Okay, so for folks who don't know you, how would you describe Darren to someone who's never met you?
Dad joke enthusiast.
I love how everybody answers that question a little bit differently. Now, if I were to describe you to somebody that didn't know you or try to introduce you, I would probably say, you are a very talented creative. You are somebody who has been arguably a pioneer within the respective industries that you've lived in. So from your time at Outliers and in the ski industry and kind of creating content and helping evolve that industry and that medium all the way to what you're doing today with your agency.
It's funny, I don't look at myself that way, but I do very much appreciate that, and it feels good to be spoken like that.
I'd love to get a sense of how did you get there? Do you want to share a little bit about how you grew up and how you started to get into film and photography and what led us here?
Absolutely, yeah. It started quite some time ago. It's 23 years ago, actually. On Grouse Mountain, snowboarding, I broke my back. And I remember clearly it was a bluebird day, perfect spring day, about this time of the year. And we're hitting this hip jump. Everything's going perfectly. I'm batting a little bit above my pay grade at this point. But that's what 18-year-olds do, especially myself. And I just took off the wrong way on the jump, and I ended up falling about 35 feet, landing flat on my back. Broke my T4 vertebrae and compressed and fused my T3, 4, and 5 vertebrae together. More so than the physical pain was the emotional pain and just the feeling that that getting back to the mountains just wouldn't look the same for me. And that was a challenge for me over the months of recovery. And so what happened is as I got back into the mountains, the doctors cleared me and they said, don't do what you did last time, like take it easy. And so when I got back, I just picked up a friend's dad's video camera. My friend Shane, I picked up his video camera, and I just started filming my friends. That was it. But the moment I started doing that is the moment I realized like I'd found my new passion in life, and my passion for snowboarding had now been translated or transferred and replaced with my passion for filmmaking. I became like hooked would be an understatement. I became absolutely obsessed with the craft of filming, reviewing footage, editing, watching these old machines try to figure out how to export the footage, put it online, and then repeat that whole process. And so I did that, and I haven't really stopped doing that ever since.
I used to take a little mini DV camera on hill. We just shoot, mess around, and then come back. And I had a little converter. You'd put the mini DV into the VHS cartridge, and then we would hook up to VCRs and plug in our Discman, and we would make little videos back then.
Oh yeah.
It was wild. That was such a fun time.
And so it was so much harder back then. It's like such a privilege right now to everyone's got a camera and everyone's got a editing software on their phone essentially.
Oh yeah, man. Well, it's cool to see how you took that to the next step, and I'm sure there are so many things that transpired in that time. We'll get there. But I guess, if you were to ask any of your friends back in the day or your family, would they say that they thought you might have always been drawn to storytelling or film or have a creative aptitude?
I don't think so, to be honest. I enjoyed doing pottery and stuff like that in class, but I was just really into sport. I've always been into sport. That was more my driver than anything creative. So I do think that there was some sort of spark that may have ignited inside me on that first day filming in the mountains.
It's so cool to see how skiing really became an entry point for something much bigger. And I love hearing people's stories on how it was a catalyst for folks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been incredible just being able to film with in those early days, film with talented athletes and kind of learn from them and grow together is kind of what ended up happening.
What did younger Darren think his life would look like?
I had like literally zero goals. I feel like I didn't start goal setting until like earlier 2026, like this year. But I had no goals. I was just laser focused on shooting, editing, repeat. By the time I'd done university, I'd made maybe 3 ski and snowboard films, quite amateur, to be perfectly honest, like very home video. So I made those in university. And then once I kind of entered the quote unquote real world, I started working at a restaurant in Whistler as a dishwasher, and I worked my way up to the Toastmaster. And so I remember vividly thinking like making minimum wage and thinking like, literally, if I can do this for the rest of my life, I'll be happy. And what I mean by this is work from 4 p.m. to 2 a.m. at the restaurant, and then wake up at 6 a.m., go snowmobiling, make ski and snowboard films, go home, and then go to work. That was it. I was like, that was the dream. I would wash dishes if it meant I could go and make snowboard and ski and mountain bike skateboard films.
That sounds like the dream.
Yeah, absolutely. Still is.
So let's talk. Yeah, no shit. Sounds like the dream still to this day. I don't think my body could keep up with that. But okay, let's go back. Let's talk about the Velours era and, being in the ski industry and all that. Like for me, I was over at Evo around that era working marketing, and Evo was an up and coming e-commerce retailer doing things that was kind of disrupting the industry, pissing a few people off maybe just because they were doing things a little bit differently. Now, Velours, to me, I was such a fangirl and excited about what you're doing. I love the aesthetic and kind of how you were bringing these stories to life, but also I feel like you were kind of a fresh new thing, doing it a little differently. Then no shade on anyone else that was, releasing films at that time, but kind of was a little stale at the time, and it was kind of the same thing. So talk a little bit about how this project came together and how it became a thing and what's with the name.
Yeah. Valeurs was a clothing brand that we started in about 2003 with myself, Bruce Giovando, and later Harvey Lee. And we started in university in the dorm rooms, and really like it. I say clothing brand, but it wasn't. The intention was not a clothing brand. The intention was to spray paint 5 T-shirts and 5 hats and wear them around university. Like that was it. But around that time, I started making these little videos, and we started posting them online. And this is like so early on that the websites couldn't really handle the streaming of video. Facebook just started up, but there was no video for Facebook. Instagram didn't exist. YouTube didn't exist. And so we had to find a way to just upload videos onto a website. And even then, a lot of people didn't have any internet fast enough to even watch our content. But as the years went on, we continued to create video, and then we started getting requests for clothing. And I remember our first request came in Calgary. Someone in Calgary wanted a T-shirt. We were like, weird, we don't make T-shirts. Like we spray painted 5 shirts. And so we spray painted him a shirt. And then the next day there was like a request for a hoodie. And then we're just like, let's invest like $600 and like make hoodies, T-shirts, because people wanted them. There was no plan. There was no goal setting. There was no brand we were trying to create. It just started happening. And then fast forward, let's say 3 or 4 years, and now we've got these feature-length ski and snowboard films that are featuring talented athletes like TJ Schiller and X Games gold medalists and free ski and snowboard and mountain bike skateboard athletes. And that kind of just happened organically through being in the mountains. And at the same time, we're now trying to fulfill like actual orders for actual product that we're having manufactured in a skilled, high quality facility. And that's kind of how things really started, and how the growth kind of organically happened.
Yeah. Did you realize that you were building an ecosystem that worked very much in concert between the brand and the tangible goods, content? Was that intentional, or were you just like, this makes sense?
No, it was just, we just did what we liked doing, right? So we're 20 years old. Bruce Giovando, he loves design. He loves designing shirts. He loves seeing people wear shirts. Harvey comes from a sourcing background, also early 20s, and he likes the production of clothing. And my interests and my passion are in filmmaking. And so we just kind of did what we wanted. And it turns out that we did create a community very organically. And that community ended up being like, it always stayed very grassroots. It never became something huge in my opinion, but the community ended up kind of compounding and becoming quite a strong. We became quite a strong group of individuals, and a lot of talented athletes joined us on our what we called our family at the time.
Oh yeah. I was a snowboarder, but I was definitely a big fan. Wanted to be a skier. I was at Evo early days. It was very much a ski brand, and everyone saw it as a ski brand. So I kind of just got sucked in.
Yeah,
it's all snow sliding. At what point did you realize that you were onto something and realize that media was changing? That's a big question. That's going to dovetail into some obvious big chunks of conversation about it.
Yeah, so around 2008, I'd say 2009. What I started doing is in post production, I started chopping down our feature length films into like little, I had our 45-minute film, and I started chopping it down to like little 15-second moments that were funny, fun, or entertaining, or interesting, or maybe even inspiring, and started posting those online. And what ended up happening with the rise of social media is that my bite-sized pieces of content, or my micro stories, or my funny moments and bloopers ended up outperforming our 45-minute film that we spent 12 or 13 months making each year. And so at first I was like kind of disgruntled because we put so much effort into the film, and it's not that the films weren't performing, but it's that there was like virality happening with the short form content. And so we just started to put out tons of little trailers and short form moments. And at that point in time, I realized that this is the way we're going to be consuming content. It's going to be short form. It's going to be on phones. And it doesn't mean this is the only way we're going to start consuming content, but it's going to be a new format that's going to be on the rise. And so essentially, as the clothing brand, we kind of long story short, we had a very positive and happy, not necessarily exit, but we all went our separate ways from that clothing brand. And I went and doubled down on creating short form content for brands in the outdoor and sport and wellness industries.
Wow, you just went right into my next question. How was it that you became an agency operator? Were you just freelancing at first, and was that scary? Like, talk about, what is your progression to today with Magnifier, and what you're doing?
Change is hard. Change is hard for anyone, and that pivotal moment, which was more like a 6-month period than a moment of deciding to leave our baby, Voleurs, and to move on, was incredibly challenging. But when one door closes, I believe another door opens. So through, self-doubt and questioning my own future and deciding what I'm actually going to do with my life, I ended up just continuing a portion of who I am and what I love, which was the filmmaking, the filmmaker in me. And so I just kept working, and I started working, and I worked with really cool folks like Josh Berman at Level One, who you likely know, and I got to work with big brands like Monster Energy Drink and Solomon for Ski TV through Mike Douglas and Switchback Entertainment, and I just attempted to kind of hone my craft in even more. And through that freelance period, I started a new business essentially, and the goal was never to grow an agency. This goes back to my lack of goal setting. The goal is just like, hey, this works, I like it, I'm just going to freelance forever. What ended up happening is I just started getting too busy, and so I brought on a person named John. John is currently still with us. He's our head of post-production. He's an absolute rock star. And so I brought on John, and then the next person, and the next person, and then we've just been scaling ever since.
At that time, in the era of Lures, and probably early when you were starting your agency that you didn't want to start, I remember when I was at Evo, and we were, whether it was working with the ski and snowboard film companies on sponsorships or looking at ways to market ourselves with social media. I remember we still at that time were getting pushback, early, like 2008, early 2000s, like even like a lot of the ski snowboard brands were like, well, selling online is okay. Some were like, it's not okay. Most still wanted us to sell in the physical shop. And then when we talk about social media and wanting to collaborate, they're like, well, they didn't really see the value on and a lot of the production companies hadn't quite started doing what you're doing at that time. Were you getting a lot of pushback in that era when you were starting to say, hey, I remember when I started my agency in like 2010 or 11 or so, we were like, okay, we need size content, we need to be doing this, we need to be doing that. And people were like, well, what's the point? We want to spend a lot of money on one big video, and that is what we're going to do for marketing.
Yeah, it's crazy. There's still brands that don't want to focus on TikTok, which is wild because it's just like an untapped resource of billions of people that some large scale brands just don't want to touch. But yeah, the early days for us, we I'm grateful that we started a partnership with Red Bull right off the bat, and this is 12 years ago now. And Red Bull is a leader. Red Bull is a pioneer in all things marketing, and so by partnering with them, to be totally honest, I was able to learn a ton from them and how they work and transfer those skills into Magnifier and what we do. And so, yeah, just having those types of partners early on was super helpful. And it didn't happen overnight. But now social is a mandatory, and organic social specifically is like on the rise a ton right now. And so, sometimes things take a while to change.
Yeah, the trend that I've seen is people are just done being advertised to. Now with the rise of AI, they're like, what's real, what's not. So the organic storytelling is really important. And that's not just something, you see the kind of content influencers are putting up, and there's some relevance and there's a space for that. Like, I think less like influencer content, but just real people giving real human reviews, or showing rates of the product and its environment is important. But to truly create a story arc for a brand, and then figure out how to create channel appropriate assets that will spider across the entire ecosystem of web where they have a footprint is like, that's an art, man. Not anyone can do.
Yeah.
For folks who don't know Magnifier, can you give me, the elevator pitch? What do you guys do?
Yeah, essentially, we're pretty niche. We laser focus on creating short form content for brands that want to win on social media and for brands in the outdoor sport and wellness industry. So we've continued to focus on what we know and what we're good at, which is outdoor sport, and snow, ski, climb, hike, trail run, football, soccer. A lot of the major sports we are lucky enough to follow. Major league players in the NFL and NBA and hockey and NHL and whatnot. And we've just continued to double down on creating organic social content. Now, surprisingly, that's not everything we do. We also create internal content for brands. We create commercials. We do 30-second spots. We do bigger production campaigns and these types of things all the time. But what we're really laser focused on is short form content and helping brands win across all social platforms, specifically Instagram, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, YouTube, and LinkedIn.
Okay, so this is all making sense to me, which is kind of unfair to the audience. Some people might be like, organic content, what do you mean? And TikTok, that's still like voodoo to me. So you have a content marketing system. First and foremost, before you explain it, can you describe what organic content is versus the alternative? And then tell us about your content marketing system.
Absolutely, yeah. Organic is content that is not being run through paid, so it's not an advertisement. It's content that goes out on brands' accounts that doesn't necessarily run through paid and often isn't attempting to drive conversion immediately. So it's not trying to sell something. The opposite of organic content is paid media, paid content, which it can be for brands that aren't doing a good job. It can feel transactional. So the buy one, get one free, or, Black Friday sales, or any of those types of pieces of content that most people just don't want anything to do with. A lot of that will be paid. Now, there are tasteful ways to run paid, absolutely. But that's the main difference between organic and paid, is like whether the brand is sparking and putting money behind a bunch of video or photo in order to sell. And so leaning into the second part of your question there, we noticed a few years ago that brands were struggling to create content that lives across all platforms. And so the way we went about this 5 or 10 years ago, and the way a lot of brands still go about it, is to create one hero asset. So they're going out on shoot day in the field with talent, athlete, or ambassador, cameras, people, crew, even if it's just 3 or 4 people in a small production, brands are going out and they're going and creating one 30-second hero asset or a 50-second hero asset. And then what's been happening is those brands put that piece of content out on their channels, and they put the same piece of content out on across all social channels, and it's likely going to flop. Because 1, you just only have one piece of content, and 2, the content's not optimized across all platforms. So what we did is, over the past 6 years, we developed an approach we call the content pyramid approach, where while you're on set for shoot day and you've already got all these things locked in for your hero asset, you go and develop 8 shoulder assets. The 8 shoulder assets are strategically optimized and strategically designed to perform across social media channels. But by adding these 8 shoulder assets, you're only usually adding a small amount of resources or a marginal increase in effort. All the production's already organized, the people are there, the talent are there. You just need either 0 or 1 other person to capture social media content that's vertical, built for TikTok, Instagram, YouTube Shorts, and other platforms. And what we found was that by developing these 8 shoulder assets, not only was it a marginal increase in effort, the results, my results were 20 times the reach. And so I took results of us doing this for brands and for our own channels from the past 6 years, and the actual number came in at 21 times the reach. I just say 20 because I like to round. 21 times the reach are from the 8 shoulder assets than the hero asset, and it's only a marginal increase in effort. And brands have found this to help them grow in a significantly faster way, to grow their channels in a significantly faster way than just going and putting all your eggs in one hero basket.
Yeah, it's interesting. So there's a lot that I think our era of coming up into the media industry, I have no formal background in marketing. I didn't study marketing. I didn't study film or anything. But, I think there's a combination of the time in which we came up in the industry, we're motivated enough, scrappy enough, and passionate about something to really practice the craft, figure it out. Because, I didn't have a lot of resources to do a lot of this stuff when I was just getting going. So I'm like, okay, well, how are we going to get more out of less, right? That said, what I have learned, you just gave the world your special sauce. I've been doing this for a long time too, and I'm very transparent, and I've always been advocating for, you got to get more bite-sized content, you got to do the thing, and it has to be optimized for channel, but it's not enough to just, put that out into the world. It's an art to choreograph, you have to have that creative vision, the logistical, discipline and understanding, and as well the right crew to execute. Because, I've tried to take, this and ask of this, for other, I've hired other creatives to try and execute against these strategies. And they're like, does that compute? Cannot this? Because they maybe have been doing it a certain way for so long, or unwilling to evolve and grow or change, or don't believe in the future of, media.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen resistance? Like, why is it that you and certain folks have been able to figure this out and others haven't?
Yeah, there's a few things there's a few directions I can go to answer that. But first, to get the full breakdown on how we do this, it's actually a lot simpler than it sounds to create the content pyramid approach. I'll go into that briefly, but I just dropped yesterday. I just put online a free playbook, and it's at magnifiermedia.com/playbook. And essentially, you mentioned that it feels like it could be a heavier lift, but it really, what you want to do is you want to put the resources and your time into the ideation phase for the 8 shoulder assets. And so put some effort into coming up with the ideas for the shoulder assets. But then on shoot day, it's generally pretty lo-fi in terms of production. It doesn't have to be with big cameras. It can be with iPhones, and it doesn't need extremely talented DPs. And so that's where the heavy lift is. But yeah, we've just found it's been super helpful, and I think brands still push back, but those are brands that just don't understand the realm of social media right now, and the impact that content that is built for social can have. Because literally, if you want to reach the most amount of people in the world, it's through social. Almost everyone in the world now has access to a phone, right? Not everyone's going to see your billboard. Not everyone's going to open up a newspaper or a magazine, but everyone's got access to a phone, and most people have social media. So it is the best way to reach audiences.
Okay, so that begs 2 questions. One, okay, I'm sure you've been there. There are times that I'm talking to a prospective client, I shouldn't say no, or they don't believe in it. Is this going to go downhill from here? But I say yes, and every single time I think I've regretted it almost every single time. I have definitely had some situations where they've turned around and they're like, "Oh, I see it now. Awesome, cool." But do you say no to clients ever if they're like pushing back?
Yeah, I see your dilemma here. Do you mean say no to clients on a plan, or on bringing them on as a client? I've never said no. You know what we actually do is we go out and we'll use the content pyramid on that shoot before our own channels. So we'll showcase like BTS, we'll create like BTS assets and like Instagram carousels and like meet the director and how we set up this one specific drone shot or whatever that might be. And we'll create the assets for our own channels. And then once we have permission to go live, we'll drop them on our own channels and then the client will see them. And I just had 2 days ago, this happened and clients like, okay, I think we need to follow you for the next one.
Talk about validation, because, you know, if you're truly saying that it isn't that much more lift if done strategically, if you as the business owner are willing to invest your team's time in that, like, and then you have the other, you know, your clients saying that you were willing to and were able to execute against that. Talk about like really, you know, living your truth there.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Like often, you know, with my role, like I used to be an editor and filmer, then director, and now I'm essentially like I'm a head of creative, and I help our clients come up with the overall plan. But then I'm generally not on set. What I've been doing though, because I miss it and I want to hang out on set, is I just come and I shoot all the BTS assets in the course of like an hour and a half, and then we have all of our shoulder content for our own channels, and it's kind of a selfish way for me to stay involved, but get to shoot.
That's awesome. Yeah. Okay. Ready for the bomb drop?
Yeah, let's do it.
About artificial intelligence. Now, this is obviously a contentious, hot topic right now, especially when it comes to creative arts. I will say that I used AI this morning, and I will probably use it after we're done recording. And I use it a lot in my life. I wish I didn't. But, you know, because of the environmental impact and a lot of other things, I feel like my brain is getting smaller and smaller. But I think I've found that there's a place for using it for things like pre-production or organization or processing a lot of information and research. But there is a fine line. You know, I've even used it for storyboarding and some other things and some more advanced functions. But, you know, I'd love to hear your perspective on the role of AI. Or not in the creative space.
It's yes, you know my answer. I'm happy to give away how we're using it. Absolutely, and what'll happen is it'll change next month. But I'll tell you how we're using it right now because it's moving so quickly. We're essentially we've changed our approach and mindset recently, and we're essentially using it a ton for pre-production. And I use it probably the most out of anyone here because I'm the one who I create a lot of documentation. I do a lot of like repetitive computer stuff, quotes and contracts and briefing in, especially briefing in my team, creative documents going to client, you know, call sheets and production plans and all that stuff. That's just a lot of words, and AI has been so helpful. Like not only is my quality doubled, my quantity is probably 5x faster creating all this documentation. I just wouldn't even bother creating the documentation, and then we wouldn't be as aligned if it wasn't for AI. Now, what our outlook, given the way that the audiences in the world has reacted to commercials that McDonald's and Coca-Cola and previously Toys R Us made, is to not use full Gen AI to create creative. Like audiences are roasting those brands, which is music to my ears. We don't want to lose the craft, but my job is to run a successful business. And so if we had to go down a full AI gen route, I would do that. Thankfully, I don't, because the world is backlashing to complete Gen AI content. It feels like what's happening is that audiences feel like trust is removed when you're just using a computer to generate an entire commercial. Like it doesn't feel real. That's not a real person, and the world is not okay with that. The way we're going to continue moving is to use AI to add flavor or spice up an edit or to do VFX type post-production activities that don't necessarily involve a VFX house that we can do quick and we can do of high quality. So it's essentially taking live action and when appropriate and when tasteful, using AI to elevate the existing live action through effects and movements. And sometimes it's like removing exit signs out of the back of a shot, or removing a house that we don't love. That's the stuff we're like exploring with the permission of our client partners.
What about, are you using it to optimize some processes like color grading or audio, or anything like that?
Yeah, and it's really interesting. I thought there was going to be, I thought we were going to have to go hunting for all these apps that we're going to all do different things, and we're going to have like a huge app stack. But a lot of this is built into our existing apps, so it's like everything that we would want to use either is already included in Premiere or DaVinci, or will be pretty soon. And so it's just I believe it's just gonna arrive in our apps on an overnight update, and we're just gonna keep moving and keep kind of improving our craft using AI and improving efficiencies.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's an optimistic view, which is, refreshing. There's a lot of negativity and naysayers. I still struggle with it for a lot of reasons, but what I hear and what I've seen in so many ways, it's actually validating. It really tells us that, humans have a role and are important in the creative process. And we've seen that when it comes to video and social media content and stuff that's coming out. Those examples you listed are perfect. It's interesting, global trade, China democratized access to gear, made it more affordable, which created this, the sea of an opportunity for creatives and people who maybe couldn't afford to be in the space or, didn't have access before. And I think there was a lot of fear from the OGs, people who'd been doing for years, spending a lot of money on gear and seasoned. I think there was also a little bit of looming fear about AI as well. But, I do think it's going to really help us sort through, really, creative vision, innate skill. You can't replace that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. Like what's happening right now with the rise of just AI and AI slop is that we're seeing audiences appreciate human craft even more. So Apple came out with this new kind of logo, graphical animation, and it looks like VFX, but then it was actually done practically, so in real life. And the BTS video is the one that's like popping off, and that's been like across the board. We've been seeing brands show a very impressive piece of work that could have been made by AI, and then later on or the next day releasing the behind the scenes human craft people on set. And that's been like incredible for brands. So it's really interesting to see the opposite effect. Things are going like the opposite way I predicted last.
Yeah, that's cool. I really appreciate that. That actually is a great segue into like where the industry is going, creative marketing, social media and all that. I was going to ask earlier, and I heard you mention, shoot on your iPhone. In a lot of cases, we have content that will shoot to replicate user-generated content to make it feel handheld. We'll shoot on mobile phones sometimes. Sometimes we'll replicate that vibe like with, production cameras. But, I think people are looking for human moments. They're not looking for perfection. Where do you see the industry going?
I think documenting the human condition is really resonating with people, and it always will, because we all struggle, we all have failure, we all have wins, we have success, we have anxiety, we have sadness. We can all relate to that. So creating artistic, creative and film and photography that documents the human condition is something that is I think foolproof until the end of time. We as humans want to connect with other real humans emotionally and through conversation and through socializing in person or through a call like this. That's what we strive for as humans, and we actually need it. It's like an essential need, just like water and food. And so I think that creating content that resonates on a deeper level emotionally is going to withstand the end of time.
I agree completely with you. I think also it's funny. I'm curious what your take is, but I've been looking at ways to reintroduce long form content into the picture around a hub and spoke strategy. But I think long form content to have that deep connective tissue, that it has to come back full circle, or, looking at how to develop episodic, content that could have through lines, a narrative that kind of follows a trajectory.
Yeah. Films, brands like Arc'teryx and Yeti creating long form films that live on YouTube, I think is really powerful. And I think that should be a focus for brands, especially brands that can't afford it. Not all brands can. It is more costly going long form documentary, but I do believe that there is a feeling that someone leaves when they watch an engaging, entertaining, or inspiring film in long form format that isn't replicatable elsewhere.
I agree. Yeah, I'm really excited to see where things go, and it's crazy. Things are changing so fast. So what we talk about today, it'll be fun to circle back in a couple months and see if anything talked about made sense. I have a lot of folks who probably are listening that understand and get what we're talking about. Some who might be like, think we sound like the Peanuts, all the adults in the Peanuts cartoon. But I do think you're an outlier. The premise of the show is really to highlight people who have done something a little differently or who are excelling in a space. And, I really have followed your career, and I feel like we've had really cool adjacent parallel paths, not too far, probably a good hour and a half away from each other. But, in your words, what is an outlier? What do you think? I'm curious how you feel hearing that and what you think an outlier is.
Oh, that's a great question. I would say an outlier is someone who is incredibly good at bringing people and bringing communities together for positive change.
I love that. I think that has been my life story. If I were to look at the through line to everything I've done, and I think similarly you too, whether building your team there at Magnifier or in the ski community, what you did for so many, whether kids who filmed with you, for you, or watched your films, and Warriors spray painted T-shirts, it meant something.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And you know who's a real outlier? I think Molly Hawkins is a real outlier, to be perfectly honest. And no, you won't take that feedback, but I do think
part of my practice, if I were to talk to a therapist, I'd say I need to get better at receiving compliments.
Don't we all?
That's why I like to put the mic in front of other people and be behind with.
But you're an outlier. You're bringing communities together. You're bringing me. You brought me. You brought me here, and I really appreciate it. And I'm loving the conversation.
Hell yeah! Well, thanks for that. I really do appreciate it. And I'm, as an adult now, I think I could call myself an adult. I am starting to try and own that and figure out what I could do with that. So more to come with that. But before we wrap, I guess I want to. What's next for Darren? What are you excited about? Are you building anything on the horizon that you can share?
Yeah, absolutely. I love my new role here at Magnifier. It's very different, but I am becoming more and more interested in kind of business and business growth and working with people and growing a team. And so it's been exciting to dabble in this realm, which is a little bit less creative than I've previously been used to. So that's just kind of like an exciting challenge that I'm trying to figure out as I go. Interesting projects. Super grateful we get to work with Arc'teryx on an ongoing basis. Incredible team, incredible folks. Oakley Meta, if you know those AI glasses that record video, we work a ton with Oakley Meta, and we're shooting in the mountains in about 3 weeks, mountain biking and trail running and golf. So that's going to be a really exciting project that I'm gonna. I'm lucky enough that I'll come and shoot the BTS for, of course, and that's kind of what's on the horizon that I'm really looking forward to.
Hell yeah! Well, thank you for sharing that. I cannot wait to continue to follow your journey through the interwebs. And next time I'm up in BC, I'll definitely give you a shout. I'd love to see your space and tag along, be a fly on the wall in one of your production.
Yes, please do that. Please do that. I am hoping to come down to your neck of the woods at some point in time this summer as well. So thank you.
You're more than welcome. Darren, this was so much fun. It definitely felt like going down memory lane, and I appreciate you doing the good work, and hopefully we'll get to do this again here soon.
Thank you, Molly. Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for the conversation.